So here's the program. I had removed this carburetor to put a different carburetor on, and so I'm just going to walk through the process of getting this sucker set up. I haven't changed the front to back linkage, although I'll probably play with it a little bit just to make sure that it's adjusted. And so before firing it up, I'm just going to adjust the side to side here, and it's bringing the left rear carburetor throttle stops back just a little bit, just as a starting point, just to make sure that it gets started up in the best possible position. First thing I'm going to do is just turn the car on, run the fuel pump to fill up this carburetor, and make sure that the fuel connections that I've done are not leaking. But it's going to run like crap. So it looks like the fuel isn't leaking. Fire it up. So at least I got it, I think it's good enough to run. Let it warm up a little bit. And just while it's warming up, see if I can check the side to side, even though it's not fully warmed up. So I've got about 4 here, and about 3.5 here. I'm just going to play with the side to side linkage until I can get them to flow about even. I'll do this all once it's warmed up as well. Going up. I don't know that there's any, I figured out the real magic here. This thing has got a spring in it, so I just very unscientifically bounce back and forth. Let the throttle stops off, make sure it's off all the way, and I'll adjust it later. Just a little bit. Looks like that's about as good as we're going to get it for now. Now maneuver. back. This side to side here shouldn't need to be touched because I haven't changed it. Little coughing there. So that's about right. They're both flowing about 7. And if they weren't flowing about 7, I'd use this center turnbuckle very, very carefully to make them so they were flowing at 7. And drop it back down. So there's just a little slack in the cable. I've got a little imbalance here that's troubling me. About 3.5, a little more, 3.5, 3.5, about 3.5 there, the front, also about 3.5, so that's pretty good. Let's bring it up. Rev it up a little bit. So out of the box, that's not bad. This has now got 55 idle jets in it, and the mixture screws here are 3 out all the way around. This seems to work pretty well. Now I'm going to just do a little side to side. It's about 3.5 in that barrel, a little bit. So I'm going to take this and back it out slowly until the flow matches from barrel to barrel. You can see it coming up there a little bit. So now it's to 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5. It's a little high. 3.5, even a little high there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the front to back linkage again, and then I'll go to the idle stop screws. So that's about perfect. At about 1500 RPM. Raise it up a little bit more. Sounds good though. 7. Not quite 7. So 'm drop down the idle, readjust this, then I'm going to play with that a little bit. Three and a half, and 3.5. Okay, well, I think I'm going to have to monkey with this center linkage a little bit. because it's a little bit not flowing even from the back. Vice grips on there because that thing's certainly pretty stiff. So that's it. I'm going to do the side to side on each carb again. That's about good there. 3.5, 3.5, 3.5. It's a little high. I noticed it. I know that this is out a little bit, so I'm going to bring that back in. Close it up a little bit. Good. So that's really damn close. So I'm not going to mess around with the idle stop screws except to just bring them up in contact. Carb stop. Very carefully. But I like it idling about where it is. I'm happy with that. 3.5, 3.5, 3.5. closed all the way. Okay, now I'll lock down all these screws, and I'll tighten up these screws here. I find this is such really sensitive, and I just lock one of the screws, and I figure, where's the other one going? Probably nowhere. So next step would be to take it out for a spin, drive it around, and then come back and do this all over again just to make sure that it's everything is set properly. But it sounds pretty good. Following this other threads, I had the classic stumble at about 3,500. I put 60s in it, solved it. I switched back to the 50s using 135 mains, and as you can hear, there's no farting or stumbling, but I'll take it for a drive. And let's see what that does.